Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who are back for a season 4.
Back.
We are peeking into the Greenbone saga. We are covering Fonda Lee's Greenbone saga, starting with Jade City. And we will be covering the first third of the book pretty much. Maybe a little bit under, but we also have to scene set an entire world here. So we have to do like an entire world building in this part of the third. So it will take us a minute to describe.
Only a minute.
Only a minute. You know, it's really
Hang
easy to
tight,
understand.
will only be a minute.
The intricacies of Jade and the random part where Fonda Lee goes into antitrust versus oligarchy.
Why are you so smart?
I know. I was like, oh, wow. I feel like I'm back in law school for a moment. But Laura, before we get into it, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I listened to a fun little book that was getting a lot of buzz on Twitter because it won this thing relatively unheard of called Spiffbo. Small Miracles by Olivia Atwater.
Yes, you wrote a review on this.
Yes, you can check out my full review over at ourpod.com. But this was a really fun book. It's very much along the lines of Good Omens. But I would say there's more of a lighter-hearted, sweeter feel to Small Miracles than you get in Good Omens. But there are like lighter moments in Good Omens, but overall I feel like it's a little more darkness in that book than you get in this
more
one.
Like satire, dry humor, and it feels like this one is a lot more feel good.
I think that there is some satire because there are moments throughout the book where I was just laughing out loud because there are some very funny things that happen and are said. But overall, I think that it's just a little more lighter hearted than Good Omens. But if you like Good Omens, you definitely will like Small Miracles. And I won't give away too much because I just think people should read it. It's an indie book and self-published, so I think you should all check it out and you won't regret it. I also think that the audiobook is worth listening to. That's how I read the book, was via the audio, and the narrator did a really good job, Rafe Beckley. I did appreciate how I think he was trying to use a Midwestern accent. I'm under the impression that the narrator is British.
Oh, and no.
I think he was trying to use a Midwestern accent for one of the characters, and it was not going as well as I think they had planned. But it did make me giggle anytime that this character spoke because I have a Midwestern accent. So
yeah.
I think that's what they were maybe going for, but it ended up being a little more along the lines of me trying to do a British accent.
Hey, we all have our strong suits.
But overall, the narrator was really great. Really, really great. That's the only nitpick I have for the narrator. And the other thing that's a little bit hard to get used to in that book is that there's a lot of footnotes, a lot of footnotes. So you hear this little chime before they start, and then it chimes again after it's over. So that it happens a lot and it's hard to get used to at first, but you do kind of get into the rhythm of it. But I can see if that's something that's going to bother you, maybe you should go into the print version.
Okay, good to know.
It's a really fun book. Highly recommend. I'm going to be trying to check out more of the previous Spiffbo entrants and current Spiffbo entrants. So I'm really excited. You can find a lot of them on Twitter. That's where it seems to be a little bit bigger writing community is over on Twitter. There's more of these authors who are self-published indie authors. And I've noticed on Instagram, I see less of that and more of the book fanatics who are readers. Readers more so. Right. And I shouldn't say just book fanatics are on Instagram. That's not right.
I like to call it people who read traditional publishing. Like that's a good broad way to define it.
Yeah. If you're gonna see fantasy over on Bookstagram, it's going to be Sanderson or R.F.
Mhm.
Kuang. It's going to be some of the big ones. I feel
Yeah.
like you're not going to see as many of the small press or indie books
Right.
over there. But I kind of like to flip-flop. I do mostly just like creeping on Twitter because I'm shy and don't want to
Yeah.
like share my innermost thoughts on Twitter, where it seems much easier to share a picture on Instagram than it does to like be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking right now.
Yeah,
But-
we're not really big shoot off the hips for thoughts, which is funny because we have a podcast where we often shoot our thoughts off the hip.
Well,
but...
and here's the other thing, Hannah. Do you ever like worry about this where you're like, the internet is forever? And I don't know why it worries me more on Twitter than it does on Instagram, because Twitter can be a little vicious.
Well,
Granted, I don't have hardly any followers. I have hardly any followers, and I don't think that I would say anything mean or controversial, but I do just worry that like people will see something I post and they're like, that's stupid. I'm just like, no, don't be mean on Twitter.
That's amazing.
So that's mainly my own insecurity holding me back from posting more on Twitter, but I'm trying. I told people I had a review out on our blog today, so go read that tweet and then go read
that
review.
Tweet.
Go
to
read the tweet.
Pokemon, go to the polls.
To Twitter. But
That's
anyways,
amazing.
Check out all those Spiffbo entrants, and I've been seeing most of it on Twitter, and in my creeping on Twitter is where I've been really coming across all these authors sharing about their books. A lot of them I'm adding to my TBR because they look really great. So
love it.
Yeah, check those all out. Another thing I read, so Bookish Bookstagram bestie Jones in the Books reads so many graphic novels, always has amazing ones that he's reading. And a while ago, he shared a picture and a post on Lightfall, which is a middle grade series, graphic novel series. And the first book is Lightfall, The Girl in the Galdurian. And this is the cutest fantasy series. It's adorable. And it's an epic adventure about Bee and her pal Cad, he is a member of the Galdurians that are an ancient race that they didn't think were around anymore. And they go off on this epic quest. And this is some of the most beautiful, stunning art that I have seen, especially in a middle grade novel. I feel like a lot of times it's a little more bold strokes and not as many details when you're in a middle grade novel, but this book is beautiful. There were so many. I didn't return it to the library right away after I finished it because I was like, I kind of want to look back through it because some of these are just really pretty to look at. And some of the pages were just a full picture, and I would just stare at it for a while because it was so pretty. I was trying to take in all the different details. So it's a really cute book. I'll read the second one once it's available to me on Libby. And I think others, if you have kids that are of the ages of like 5th grade, I think is probably about right, that they would really like The Girl in the Galdurian.
I love that.
It's a cute one. And thank you to Jones in the Books for recommending that. Jones in the Books is a great source for graphic novels. So all of them on Bookstagram, people.
Jones in the Book has been awesome during our Mega May buddy read that I've been hosting. That
but okay,
no one.
I don't know if he'll listen to this episode because he occasionally listens. But he was cracking me up with his posts about, because he is having the same issue that I am, where this is a slow book for people who have read Piranesi know how fast paced that book is. This is the inverse of Piranesi.
Well, okay, so first
slow.
of all, Hannah's hosting a Mega May buddy read of Susanna Clarke's Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. I adore this book, but it is the slowest, most like episodic book you're going to read in like modern time. It is a bit of a slog I mean,
it's very slow. I wouldn't say it's unenjoyable. That's not my direction that I'm going with this at all. I just think that it's a very slow book, very slow. And I had to stop reading it because I had to start reading Greenbone Saga because I can't.
You had another short book to fit in.
I couldn't read too many large books at a time, and that one is also large. But have been still following along with like the group chat and everything, and I noticed that Jones of the Books posted a story today that was last now next of what he's reading, and it's for his now. It's a picture of Jonathan Strange, and it says, "Please help me, God." Or give me strength or something like that. And I was like, oh, hilarious.
So it's so much of a struggle because, like, guys, last year my main buddy read was Priory of the Orange Tree. And like I read it with like Sandra from Story Darlings and Dylan from FTF. And like the consensus was like, yeah, okay. And then I had more people join along with this Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell read along. And the consensus is like, yeah, okay. And I'm like, why are all
Here's the thing,
like,
though.
yeah,
I feel like this is maybe a common theme for giant fantasy standalones.
Yeah, that's true. Where people are just like,
I don't know if that's going to be something that you're going to get a different take on,
right?
Unless you pick a different genre of
so
book
next year it's Little Women, guys.
I mean, I was thinking more like, I know so many people who love like Lonesome Dove, and that's been on my TBR for a long time. I'm like, that's obviously going to be kind of slow paced too, but I'm like thinking it's got to be a different genre maybe. And I think with fantasy especially, people expect there to be so much action. They expect it to be like Wheel of Time, Dragon Reborn, where there's action to the point where you're like, I blacked out through 3 chapters because I can't tell what was happening in so many of these action scenes. But
yeah, I also feel like 500 page plus books is just a real hard one to do, like buddy reading, because it's like something where you have to like personally experience it.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I was going to say too, where it's like so many times when you're in a book that huge, you just need time to just sit with it, honestly, where it's difficult to like power through it and be like, oh, okay. Especially when with pacing like this one, where it's just like kind of a take it in slowly, like tea, you don't want to just chug it. People read at different paces, and this book especially, you're going to be reading at different paces and need to maybe like me take like 3 or 4 months.
Well, and I made sure that everyone got to choose their own pace because it is a very large book, but like it's
hard to squeeze it all in a month,
yeah, and I've done it twice now, so
yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah, so but it's been fun. I actually like hosting the Mega May reads because like it almost feels like a Misery Loves Company kind of format where everyone's like, yep,
I mean, I think
that.
I think the thing I like about it is that there's more of a motivation to tackle some of these bigger books on your TBR if you have others that are reading along with you,
right?
And maybe that's just why the buddy read is best, in my opinion, for these books, is that you have a shared experience of, we're all trying to get through these giant books that we wanted to read but been intimidated by.
Right. Which is the whole point of Mega May. And I enjoy hosting it every year. It was fun when I did it last year. It was fun when I did it this year. And I'm going
to cheat next year and do like a fast-paced
February
fantasy book. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something huge that's a fast-paced book that's huge that I'm gonna just fly through.
I'll find one for you.
A YA.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a YA. I was gonna say, you could probably do the book that I've wanted you to read for years, A Great and Terrible Beauty. I bet that's over 500 pages.
Is it? I don't know.
But
it doesn't look like it is. It looks more like a 400.
But yeah, have you been watching anything fun?
Back on my Marvel journey.
Oh, you're back on the Marvel journey.
Yeah, I watched Doctor Strange.
What did you think of Doctor Strange?
Here's the thing, Hannah. Am I problematic that I actually like Doctor Strange?
No, lots of people do.
Okay. Because I'm like, I can't say I hate Tony Stark and then be like, I like Doctor Strange.
Okay. It is a hard hill for you to die on because Doctor Strange
is so terrible.
He's just the same image, different.
Yes,
like
it's just like I'm like
slightly contrasted.
He says so many terrible things. Like I'm like, there are times I'm like, okay, Doctor Strange, you were ableist. Let's be real here. Like, come on, this is bad. But then once he starts doing some cool stuff, and come on, why am I falling for this?
here's the thing.
Got me
I
in this
really
trap.
like him. It does get harder when small spoilers. They try to convince you as time goes on that Rachel McAdams was the love of his life. And I'm like, she wasn't.
That was hard to buy.
Yeah, like I was just like, no, she wasn't. No, Rachel McAdams was not Benedict Cumberbatch's love. Like,
well, and then there's like that watch that we get the engraving on the back, and we're like, oh, okay.
to tell us Tony Stark had to prove that Tony Stark has a heart. Oh wait. Then she just scratches it out and writes something else. Yeah.
I will say though, I do think that they're a better pairing if they're wanting us to believe that they're a couple than
Gwyneth Paltrow. Gwyneth Paltrow, who doesn't know she's in Marvel movies. She's just there sometimes.
How can you not know? Those are super popular.
No memory of any of those movies. Like she's blacked them out, Laura.
Well, you know what? I guess if I was involved in those, I would too.
I mean, I would say that the worst thing is, of course, Jonathan Strange, or the Doctor Strange, Jonathan Strange. I'm
so many
stranges. So many stranges. The thing with Doctor Strange is also like, why did they have Tilda Swinton be someone who was canonically not white? That was the other bad thing.
Odd.
But as long as you understand.
There were some choices made in Doctor Strange that were interesting. I feel like along those lines where it's like, this movie is too new for some of these things to have occurred.
We're going back to 2 weeks ago? Where
that's why
this is too recent for it to be this bad. Like,
I wouldn't say it was bad though, because I was very invested in the movie. I was like, oh gosh. And it also, I think maybe just because I like Inception so much that I was very much into this, and I also am in my sci-fi era, so this had so many sci-fi elements and fantasy involved too. But yeah, I did enjoy this movie, and Doctor Strange is extremely problematic.
Where are you going next on your journey?
I can't remember what one is. It's Thor Ragnarok, because at the end there's the tie-in with like, oh, Doctor Strange searches the universe looking for problematic people who are going to cause this. Like, look in your own home first, Doctor Strange, before you go out looking for Loki.
Clean up your own home there, bud.
But anyways, he's looking for Loki, and I think Thor Ragnarok is next.
I actually really like Thor Ragnarok, so I can't wait to see your thoughts on it.
Is that the one with the Hulk?
Yes.
Okay. Because the background is green, but then it's like Thor on the little decal icon that they have on Disney Plus, if I'm remembering right.
Oh yeah, Thor Ragnarok is like one of the all-time faves because the most comedic of a lot of them. Like, it really changes who Thor was as a character throughout all the previous ones. That like, he didn't have a personality other than like, I scream things at people and I'm better than you. Yes, he pretty much has the Hulk like. So yeah, this one will be fun. I hope you like it.
Okay. I was like, I go on Disney Plus and there's all these Spider-Mans on there now. They got those on Disney Plus now. I was like, are you kidding me? There's more on here.
God, I love that.
So now I gotta watch those. But I've heard they're very enjoyable, so I think I'll be okay.
Good. Okay, good.
Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
So for reading, let me go back in the history of things, because I've been slowly making my way through, because I'm like, oh, we'll never get through these, but I have to get through a couple of them. I read The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Kolbert. I did it via audiobook, and it's kind of where I realized like Hannah doesn't like science. I'm not anti-science, but I didn't listen to a single like, every other word was just like washed away from my brain, no matter how hard I tried to focus on it. I just didn't care that much to learn about animals being extinct. So that was a rough read for me. There are certain parts that were interesting, but I feel like I'm sometimes with like topics that I'm not as well versed in, I like a little bit more of a conversation, and this just felt like a very long lecture. And it just didn't interest me as much as it should. But I also recognize that, like, do you ever read a book where you're like, I can't give it less than 3 stars because I know I'm the problem?
Yeah, that happens to me a lot.
Okay. Like, I had to do, like, I gave it 3 stars because I was like, I don't know. Like, sometimes it felt a little bit muddled. So I don't think 4 or 5 is necessarily like accurate for me personally, but also it can't get lower than 3 because like, I'm the problem. It's me. It's fine. But like, I mean, no.
that doesn't surprise me because I feel like I've known this about you where like in my mind where I read or watch a documentary or something like that and I'm like, oh, dinosaurs must know everything, all the details. And I care less about like bigger picture conversations.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need all the details about how they died. Did they have feathers? Were they in certain types of water? This and how they
It's
evolved.
just not my
And,
vibe.
and you're just like, no, I don't really care about all that.
Okay, the other day yesterday, my boyfriend and I were talking about like putting a certain pitch on a house to like get it to not leak. And he was like, oh, you know what my parents did with that stone and the mud thing? And I go, no, but I don't want to know. It's like, that's just me with any science topic where I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I trust you.
I just don't
like,
care about this.
I'm not going to learn that. I'm so sorry. And I was like, that sounded very rude. And he's like, no, I get it. You just have zero interest in learning until you absolutely have to learn what I'm talking about on that kind of topic. So certain things I just don't care about. And apparently like extinction is one of them. I was interested to hear about the different types of elephants. And I was interested to hear about like, yeah, because I guess that's what it is. You're sitting there like, ooh, all the scientific facts. And I'm like, oh, isn't it interesting that people had like philosophical arguments over what kind of, if this was a woolly mammoth or a mastodon and when it like was.
And that's what I can see you being more interested in is like the archaeologists like getting into a fight over something. And like,
I'm here for the
Wait
drama.
a minute, though. Did you forget about the part where there were fire-breathing woolly mammoths, Hannah? Like, that's not a thing. But I'm
okay,
just like, I'm
Did
just thinking
I
like
miss that?
You would.
I probably would. The confidence with which you said that, the way I was just going to like,
I just had to think of something absolutely outrageous. Is why I said that.
Something you guys should all learn about Hannah. She has zero interest in science. I think science is important. I just don't think I'm going to be the one to learn it. Okay. And then I read Y/N by Esther Yi. YN stands for your name. It's like a specific type of fan fiction where you typically insert, it's for like people who are avid fans of something to insert their own name and put themselves in the story. And so this is about a person who's like in, I believe, either college or grad school who like gets obsessed with this boy band and like this very specific person in this boy band.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of does like a deep dive into like her obsession with him. It goes into like her writings where she has like your name fiction. And then it details like her traveling across the world to meet him, and like then it gets really weird. Like she ends up going to like he goes into hiding, she's trying to find him, and then she finds him and she's like disappointed. And like it's that this one is also something where I could see a lot of people reading it and be like, I don't get it, but it's my vibe specifically. Like it's the perfect Hannah vibe book where it's like, oh yeah, I like weird fiction about weird things in people's minds. So I will read this every day, all the time. And it's like, it's obviously like kind of talking about like the K-pop bands, you know, is kind of like the purpose of this. So that one was super weird and fun and interesting and kind of like weirdly dark in a lot of the movements. And I thought like some of the most interesting portions of it was like the main character has all these people being like, you know, he's not interested in meeting you, right? Like he has no interest in you. And she's always like, no. He'll understand when I meet him. And it's like, yeah, that is how a lot of people might feel if they're not like having normal boundaries with something like this. And so it was interesting to read from that kind of perspective.
I'm always fascinated by people putting feelings and emotions into people that they don't know because they feel like they know them because they've connected with their work.
Right. And that's the thing is like so many people do that nowadays with like social media. Like if you
it's really difficult because you see, you know, you read somebody, you can apply this to authors too, because you can, I mean, how many people have connected with a certain author's work and been like, I love this author so much because I read this at a certain time in my life or whatever. And then maybe they post a couple of tweets that you're like, oh my gosh, I feel the exact same way about this. And then you're like, oh, we are just really connected, and then you're let down when you go to a book signing or whatever, and you're like, oh, they're not what I expected. Like, we were supposed to be exactly like my best friend, and you don't know them.
Yeah. And like, I think that that's a very interesting thing to look in, because like just with things like I'm like a self-admitted like, oh, I'm obsessed with Selena Gomez. I have a weird obsession with Zendaya, but it's like you can be weirdly obsessed with someone and still like have the like boundary of like, I don't know who that is. I have very little insight onto who they are as a person. And if I found out tomorrow that they're a terrible person, I can probably walk away from my weird obsession.
Unless it's Michael J. Fox, and then I will be crushed.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough.
I will be crushed if he comes out that he is a bad person.
But yeah, so like it's an interesting book. Yeah, it's just very fascinating. I don't know. It's very
that
weird.
Is interesting.
I wouldn't say it's for everyone, but if you ever want to get into like a weird psychological book, I would say like it's a winter book. Like I would read it during the winter months when you're like, oh, I just
locked
got really
alone
in my head.
And but in the dark, cold, wintry nights.
So, and then I've been watching Queer Eye because the new season hit.
I love that show.
It's just a tearjerker. It's a tearjerker.
Yeah, that's a really good show.
I know. But should we dive in?
Yes, I have from fondalee.com the Jade City list of principal characters up in front of me, so I'm ready to go.
I sent that to you. So
yes,
we open up at the Twice Lucky restaurant, where two 16-year-olds who are good for nothings, Barrow and Sampa, are getting ready to put on a heist that all 16-year-olds are playing for, where they're going to steal some jade off of one of the like drunken people who carry jade on them, because he's the easiest one to do it. And Sampa is a little bit more of a weakling, but it's noted that he is immune to touching jade. So we know that certain people are immune to touching jade. What is the name of the people?
How do you pronounce it? You've been listening to the audio on your reread. It's like Abukai?
Abukai, yeah. So he's Abukai, which means he can touch jade and he cannot have a reaction. But other people
people from Kekon,
people from Kekon, Kekonese, are more jade sensitive. So some people can control it and some people cannot, and it is more addictive towards them. So
yeah, we're in the city or the city of Janloon currently, and jade is a Janloon. Jade is a primary trade item, and it also possesses powers and amplifies these magical abilities in people who are sensitive to it.
Yes. And Barrow is Kekonese, so if he touches it, it has more of the addictive properties, but it can also heighten his, movement senses. And senses and everything. So he needs Sampa to like help him get it so that he doesn't like get overrun, and then he can use it. And they want to sell it on the black market because they have a buyer who's willing to take like forged and actually like maintain jade instead of like raw jade, which is what they usually sell for funds. So we know that there's a black market jade trade going on.
Because there are jade mines, and usually the Abukai, is that how we say that? Abukai, yeah. The Abukai people are the ones that work in these mines because they're immune of sorts to jade. And so there are people that work in the mines, they're Abukai, and then there are people who are kind of down outside of the mines that are trying to get some of the waste from the mines, some of the jade waste from there. And usually that's what Sampa does, but he's been recruited by Beru for this lovely little heist
that Sampa doesn't want to be a part of.
No.
So we go out into the restaurant portion. And this is a no peak territory restaurant, which is one of the clans in Kekon or in Janloon, where they have the no peak clan, which is run by a pillar. A pillar is usually the head of a family or clan. And then they have two people as their right and left hand. They have the weatherman, who is more the business side, runs the business, runs all the money.
Kind of their
And
wise man.
Yes. And then their fist, right? Is that what it's called?
The horn.
The horn. I'm so sorry. The horn. And they're more the, they rule with an iron fist.
They're kind of the
making
muscle.
sure
They're
that,
charge of the military branch.
And this clan is kind of, it's similar to a mafia, if you will. It's almost like having a godfather, if you will. But they have the No Peak clan, and then you have the Mountain clan. And we find out later in this book that they used to fight together against people who were trying to come in and colonize the area. But once they started breaking up, the Mountain clan wanted to be a little bit more invested in staying the course, staying with the island, keeping battening down the hatches. And the No Peak clan wanted to make sure that they established foreign trade and foreign they wanted.
I thought it was the opposite.
Is it the opposite?
I thought it was the No Peaks that were uninterested in any kind of foreign relations, but the Mountain clan was interested in trading.
Okay. So there's that. And then there are other clans, but these are the two main ones, because two of the main warriors coming out of the war were from the No Peak and the Mountain clan, and they kind of all split everything up so that no one could control the Jade in full force. So we find out that there's been trouble in the Armpit, which is kind of neutral territory, and it seems like some low-level fingers from the Mountain clan are kind of coming in and making a mess of things, especially in territories that could be argued are No Peak territory.
Because you have a pillar, then you have a horn, then you have fists, then there's the fingers.
There we go.
Underneath them in our hierarchy.
You're so much better at scene setting. So we find out all of this from two of the fists of No Peak, the Mikes. I believe that's Mike Han and Mike Tar. And then they're talking to the horn, Hilo Jen or Hilo. And we find out that Hilo is the younger brother to the pillar. And so they're kind of talking about what they need to do to make sure that the mountain isn't getting in their business. And they also find out that one of the main criminals, Three Finger G, has gone missing. And he was easy to kind of keep control of, because it's easier to know who's the criminal than to get rid of that criminal and have question marks going around.
And this is a situation where these clans in their own territories throughout the city, they kind of have control over the businesses and everything. And so they keep tabs on the business owners, offer them favors and things when they need it. And they also are keeping tabs on the troublemakers and keeping them in line when they need to as well.
So, yeah. And it's very much especially in this Twice Lucky place, it is a No Peak place where
this
people
is a
come
No
in.
Peak territory.
Yes.
And the business owners are called lanterns.
Yes. If lanterns, if they support the clan. So since this is No Peak, it has signage on the door that says that gives signs that it's No Peak. That No Peak helps keep it protected. And it treats all the No Peak people very nicely. So Mr. Yoon,
they can use it for business.
So Mr. Yoon is the owner of the cafe, and he is very, very nice to Hilo every time he comes in. So then we cut on over to Barrow as he drugs one of these people, Shanju, who is drinking very heavily and isn't protecting his Jade. And is
Shanju is kind of just a sloppy mess. He's a finger who doesn't really he thinks he has a lot of authority, but he doesn't really have it all together, and he's kind of negligent with his Jade. So he gets drunk, and then Sampa and Barrow are dressed as waitstaff and take the opportunity to drug him. They spike his drink and then get him in the bathroom when he's sick, jump him, and try to take his Jade.
And they almost get away with it.
He wakes up furious.
He wakes up and he's like, "There's a Jade thief in here." And they have a gun, and it accidentally goes off. And Barrow has Jade on him now. He's feeling the rush of it. And he's like, wow, this is amazing. He feels heightened senses, and he knows he needs to get out of there. And so he like runs out and he's like, there's a jade thief, like you gotta go get him, everyone, and like tries to like send them in.
A diversion.
Hmm?
A diversion.
Oh, bioluminescent. It is a diversion. And so he's like almost out of the room when all of a sudden Mike Tar rips him back into the restaurant. And so
he was like running up the stairs and he's almost out of there, and then he's grabbed.
Yeah. And so Hilo, then it kind of like shows what the restaurant was doing during this time. And all of a sudden they hear like a giant clatter and a gunshot. Everyone's like, oh my gosh.
Because obviously like they're not the only ones there. Like this is a place of business. So people are eating, coming in and out.
And so they like see the boy running and they could kind of tell that like he probably has jade on him because they have heightened senses
he's
too.
Really good at running and jumping.
And so they grab him. And
well, then the people are like panic because they're like, do not kill him right here. Please, please.
And Mr. Yoon is like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry this happened in my establishment. I promise. Like, and
I try to carefully vet people when I hire them.
Well, like and then Hilo's like trying to kind of cover it up, being like, oh, he should have checked for these like stupid dishwasher boys. But also like it happens and he's like very loyal to the clan. So I'm not going to yell at him. So he's like, oh, you gave us live entertainment. And
yeah, he smooths it over well.
Yes. And then the Shanju is like
he wants to make a scene and he's like I need justice for this happening, and it's like, yeah, you need to just go sober up.
And
he is making a scene, and so then Hilo basically is just like, how about you stand down because I'm in charge and we're gonna do what me and my brother say, so back off, here's your jade, peace out.
Well, and he's kind of like, hey, you should pay more attention to this and less on your drink, and then maybe you wouldn't have this. Like he kind of is hinting like it's incredibly bad and it looks bad on you that these two people were able to take jade from you.
You look like an idiot that they were able to steal this.
And so he like takes it and he kind of walks away, and like it shows that Hilo is like kind of sweet but also very harsh when he feels like he has a reason to
you're learning that Hilo can be pretty tough, and they're all kind of like on edge.
Yes.
And so are you as a reader, because you're like, why is everyone acting this way around Hilo? So you're kind of like, what's going to happen here with this person?
Right. And you do know that like Hilo can kind of control it when he really, really has incentive to. Like he's very good with Mr. Yoon because he knows like he's really loyal to us. He brings in lots of money. So I have to mollify him. But with like Shanju, he's like, you should have done better. How dare you? Like he just
an idiot. Get it together, man.
Very much into loyalty, and he's very much into like respect and respectability in his own like mind. So the boys kind of tell him that they were offered money for jade like that was already made, and he's like, oh,
because they just spill the beans instantly. They're just like, well, Sampa does, I should say.
Yeah,
Barrel kind of holds it together a little more,
and like it is scary because like Hilo's only like a 27-year-old man, but he's just sitting there like smoking and like asking them questions, and they know like these fists are with him and they're willing to like kill them if he wants to.
It's just like snap his fingers and they're gone.
I know. And so they were like, well, the buyer said it was like he was going to pay a highest rates for cut jade without asking questions. And Hilo's kind of like, you're an idiot if you think someone would steal a jade off of a green bone, which are these people who are trained to use jade. Can
I just explain quickly why they're called green bones?
Yes.
So there is a god and goddess, I shouldn't say god, it's a goddess that they believed had jade within her body, and she laid down to form the land that they are on, and her bones became the mines of jade. So that's why they're called green bones, the people that can harness the power of the jade, because they are living off the land that their goddess created for them, and her bones.
And so Hilo's kind of sitting there, and we find out I love this first third of the book because I told Laura it's kind of like going from one exposition part to another exposition part. So here it's like it talks about how like Jew had a right to lose his jade. Hilo could have grabbed it and been like, you were inept, so you don't get this anymore. And it also talks about how like even green bones feel like a want from this jade. They just have better control over it than other people. They just try to control it a little bit more than other people who are not trained to use it. And so he talks about like having them in his hand was even like super powerful, and he wanted to keep them for himself. So he also recognizes that that like Sampo will be fine because Sampo is immune, but Barrow, now that he's touched Jade, will have like
he's got a taste for it.
He's got a taste for it, and it's impossible to get rid of. They kind of call it, I believe they call it the itches. Like it's just like an obsession with getting more Jade. And so he's just kind of like, well, you're kind of done for, but okay. So he decides to take them to the pillar so that the pillar can hear from these two boys about like what's been going on, that someone's trying to sell cut jade, and that like the boys know that three-fingered G is pretty much not around anymore. So he be dead. He does ask them if they can describe the man who said that he was the carver, and they're like, sure, we could definitely do that. So we cut on over to call Lanishwan, or Lan, as he is called, who is the pillar who cannot sleep. And he talks about how like it feels almost like he should be able to sleep. He should be able to take on control of the world. And it's like he's supposed to be in the prime of his life. He's 35. His grandfather like trained him to be the leader of the No Peak clan. He accepted this mantle. He's been like running it as much as he can, but he feels like he's living in his grandfather's shadow, who is still alive, called Kalsen,
the torch of the
torch of the No Peak. And he was one of the main people who fought in the war
of many nations.
The War of Many Nations, almost like a world war. And
some may call it a world war.
Some may call this a world war, but we call it the War of Many Nations.
I actually prefer the War of Many Nations. I think that sounds too, better.
It sounds cooler. But he was one of like the main warriors during that time. And so Lan like gets up and he's just kind of walking around the family estate. It is on the flat territories because it's the No Peak. They can see all, and they're part of the city. And everything's a little bit more modern.
Everything the sun touches.
And so it also talks about like how he went through Kal Jushuran Academy. And he had to fight off rats pretty much. And like get rid of them and kill all of the ones coming at him, or he was going to fail. So it's kind of talking about how like he had to be sensitive from a young age to like use Jade against everything. And so he kind of like starts going after a mouse in the garden, and then he like has to stop. He's like, I'm gonna look like an idiot if someone catches me.
Just to note, there are 2 academies, one for each territory. Galdurian Academy is the No Peak clan's school, where they train people who are jade sensitive, and these mostly become kind of like feeders into their clan. They kind of see who has potential, this or that. And it's also named for Call Lan and Call Hilo's father, Call Du.
And so Lan stops himself from running around the garden, and then Doru finds him. Doru is the weatherman. And
Doru sucks.
Doru sucks. You immediately know that, and then you find out he sucks even more.
Hate this guy.
You just keep wondering, why won't they kick him out of the family? He's an awful human being. And like Doru is like the weatherman. He has been since the grandfather was in charge. He's like using Lance, which is a diminutive like familial endearment, which you shouldn't be doing with someone.
Little kid, like
yeah.
It's like, no, he's in charge. He's the pillar. Be respectful.
And Lana's just like letting him get away with it because he's like, oh, he's been in the family for years. And it's like, Lan, like, come on.
He's annoyed with it. He's annoyed with it. He wants them to use the correct terminology and everything, but he just kind of like shrugs it off like, whatever. He has been around for years. Grandpa thinks he's okay.
And
I guess we owe it to Grandpa.
Well, and he did run the like company side of things very well for his grandpa. So he's like, he must be doing it for us too. It also talks about how Doru was one of the few people who was in the Mountain Clan and defected to the No Peak Clan. And so he is kind of like asking about exports with the KJA, which we find out is like the federal government portion of all this stuff, who's like dealing with
Jade Alliance, isn't that what it is?
Yes, the K-Con Jade Alliance. And they kind of deal with exports, like what they're bringing in and what they're sending out from K-Con. And like the Jade clans have a lot of say-so with them. And everyone knows like the Jade clans have a lot of say-so, but they're not technically supposed to, because historically no one trusted Greenbones because of their like ability to use jade. But as time has gone on and after the war, they did gain respect. But it's almost like they're given respect to a certain point, but they're still treated as like mafia families that were sort of legitimized, if you're going to make a comparison. And so they're talking about like the KJA and the final vote about like increasing national sale of jade to foreign powers, because España and allies really want more jade because they want to use it to try to figure out how Kekanis use it. And so Lan is kind of like, oh, you know what, I think I don't agree with this. I don't want to do it. I think jade is our resource and it's for us to use. It's not for others to use. And Doru immediately was like, well, have you asked Kaljen, who's his grandfather?
Yeah. Kalsen.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Kalsen. And he's like, and well, it's Kalsen is his name, but they call him Kaljen when they're talking about the main person, and it's supposed to indicate to Lan that he doesn't see Lan as the main
he's not the leader.
Head. Yeah. Gotcha. And it says like, have you spoken to Kaljen? And it's like Doru met Kalsen. Of course, no matter the three younger Greenbones in the family, for Doru was the only Kaljen. So there was only one Kaljen, and he's just kind of like, well, I'm not going to bother my grandfather with this. I am the head of the family. This is what we're doing. So you could tell that there's a lot of like subterfuge going on with the Weatherman. Yeah. Like he thinks that Lan is controlled by his grandfather.
He's like, you're just a figurehead. Like really the grandpa's the one in charge. Be real.
And so Lan immediately thinks like, well, the Weatherman's getting old and he doesn't seem to be able to change with the time. So maybe it's time to kick him out. And then he kind of like hides that. And then his brother comes up, and you can tell that Doru also hates Hilo. He thinks he's like too hot-headed, doesn't control anything.
He's kind of like, this guy's a loose cannon.
Yeah. And so Lan comes up, and Hilo tells him everything that just happened
at the restaurant.
And yes. And he kind of talks about like the fact that Three Finger G is missing, and that's like a huge mystery at this point in time. And so they also talk about the Carver, they call him, and they say he's short, a little heavy, he has a mustache and spots on his face. And he carries a gun, and he speaks Hakanese with no accent. And they ask him where he works. They're not really sure. Most of the forge parts of Papa in the dock. So they're kind of just like weighing in on where they could possibly find this person. And then Lan looks at the kids, and he like notes that one of them will be fine. Sampa will be fine, but he knows that Barrow will suffer for the rest of his life now that he's touched jade, and he'll be too sensitive.
He's going to always want it.
And it talks about only the Kekanese, an isolated race descended over centuries from the hybridized line of the Abuke and the ancient Tuni settlers to the island, possessed a natural ability to harness jade. And even then, only after years of extended preparation. So it's kind of like, I think it's a very interesting storyline, because it's also talking about how like Kekanese technically were not like indigenous to this land as much as the Abuke was. And so it's interesting that the Abuke became used to mine things and used to harness this power for other people.
The ones, they're kind of the ones doing this for other people.
And I think it has a lot of themes about indigenous people. So good job, Fonda Lee. So they, but like Kekanese kids without training do get the itches. They do suffer. They do have potential for being volatile when it comes to jade, but like they know that foreigners have been wearing jade and like able to use some of it, they think.
Right.
But they don't know the whole story, of course, but it makes them more dangerous because now they're going after jade and higher drows when they used to like not try because they were afraid of it.
Right.
But Lan ends up letting the boys go, and Hilo's kind of like disappointed in him because he's like, that one kid is going to suffer. You should have killed him. Like
should have just killed him. He's going to be a problem later on. I can see it.
And
but we kind of learned that Lan is maybe the more forward thinking of
he's
the group, where he kind of can think 2 steps ahead, and he's like, no, I think I want to do it this way because it'll play out in a sort. He's more level-headed and less rash.
He's someone who I would say is like a peacekeeper, and he happens to be in a time where peacekeeping is not
difficult.
Is difficult to do because no one wants it right now, because there's been too much peace and there's been too much subterfuge going on, and Lan doesn't really do subterfuge. He does like, this is the move you're supposed to make, and that takes a very specific set of skills. And so they know that they think that the new carver is Tem Ben. The Thames were part of the Mountain Clan. They were a proud family of Greenbones, but like Tem Ben was a Stone Eye, which just means that the genetics combined to produce a Kekanese child is like makes them almost an Abuke, because like
where they can touch jade, but they're not sensitive to it.
Right. And they call them a Stone Eye since that they came from a Kekanese family. So they note that only a jade immune Stone Eye could buy, hoard, and cut and sell street jewelry. So like it's probably from this family person. And he had gone for a while, but now they think he's back. And he must have gotten approval from Ait. So Hilo is like super mad at this, and he thinks that it's all the Mountain Clan. Hilo's biggest pitch is all the Mountain Clan's fault. But Doru like pops his head up out of nowhere, his little egg-shaped head, and he's like, oh, come on, like the pillar of the Mountain Clan is concerning herself with carvers of black market. You're an idiot. And Hila's like, I'm not an idiot. There's stuff going on. You handle the business side. I see what's going on a day-to-day basis. And they kind of fight over it. And you find out that Lan like does agree with Doru that his brother is a huge hothead, but he also thinks that like Doru is holding
there's
back.
Something to this. Like he is out there all the time, and he does see things.
Right.
And like, so, I guess there would just be some animosity between these two. There usually is between the Horn and the Weatherman.
But we also find out that he like sees his brother as like a little kid pretty much. Like he's like, oh, you're so young. And it's like, yeah, he is 27, but also he is running your military. So
he just kind of sees him, I think, a lot of times as a liability, where he's like, this kid is going to be a problem. We need to kind of rein it in a little bit. Hilo, like, I know you want to just react, but
right.
Calm down.
And so he tells them that they can go out and they can protect their lantern men because it like protects their product, but they shouldn't attack or retaliate the Mountain Clan or whisper any names, which means like sending out a signal that they're like they've got a gun to their back that like, they want someone to take them out. If you see them,
they're done.
Yeah. But he says no one can shed blood without family approval, not even if they're offered a clean blade. And Doru is happy with this, but like Hilo is only partially appeased, and he's like, it's gonna get worse. We won't be able to ride Grandad's reputation much longer. Like we need to make our own way, and we need to put our foot down here. And like I from the Mountain Clan is making a point of parading her power as a pillar. So kind of like she's letting her power be known, and Lan is standing back and letting it happen. And so Lan reprimands him. Hilo is like, okay, like you, like, I won't reprimand you. You've got enough of that going around with everyone else. And so he kind of heads out. Doru is like, Hilo is a fearsome horn, but he just needs to be kept on a short leash. And it's like, Doru, shut up.
Doru, please, somebody whisper his name.
Right. He parts ways, and he kind of goes up to like see his grandfather and talk to him, and he does it with a little bit of misgivings, which is also sad because Lan is sitting there being like, oh god, as the pillar I should be able to sleep, I won't be rested. And then it's like, your grandfather's not sleeping and you see nothing wrong with that, so it's just a comparison game, like it's just not good. So Lan walks up. You see like a ton of like the history of the Many Nations War and how like great Carlsen was seen. And there's like photos of Lan's father up there.
It's basically just a big like shrine to himself and his legacy.
Right. And like, yeah, his wife is there. Like there are pictures of his wife and there are pictures. And like you kind of find out during the story that Lan is the only one who remembers his father. Like he was raised by his father until he was about 8. And then his 2 younger siblings, there's quite a bit of an age gap. So neither one of them remembers his dad. And he died towards the end of the war. And like his grandfather holds up his son on a pedestal. And it's like, your son probably wouldn't have liked you if the actual story played out with him being alive, because you kind of suck too. But the grandfather is kind of watching an old documentary on the Many Nations War as well. So he's just sitting there in a shrine to himself, watching. Yeah. And he kind of reminisces about like the person from the Mountain Clan who like helped him fight everyone. I do not remember the name. You have the names pulled up, so if you see it.
That helped him fight everyone?
The person who was the first mountain pillar. We'll find out his name later.
Aiyu.
No, Ait is the current pillar.
No, Aitmata is the current pillar.
Aitmata, thank you.
Aiyu is the spear of Kekan.
Aiyu is the spear of Kekan.
And is deceased.
Yes, and he is deceased. And Sen is the lantern of Kekan. And so they were kind of like a 2-person fighting force. And he's literally
Sen is the torch of Kekan.
Sen is the torch. And so like Carlsen is reminiscing about a time where he had to like hide in this person's house because they were green bones. And later on he hid there with Lan's father, and later on he finds out that those people were killed, likely because they were found out as being kind to green bones. And you realize that Sen thinks that Lan is his father, and he's like, that's not who I am. I'm your grandson. And Carlsen like immediately like changes, and he's disappointed, and he's like angry at this. And he's like,
then he just gets mean and is like, I can tell it wasn't you.
Yeah, he goes, even your aura feels like his, but his was stronger. And so Lan just kind of takes it in stride. And he talks
about geriatric old man doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right. And he also talks about like how much he's heard that he looks just like his father, and you know he's going to be just strong like his father. And he says that Shay's coming home, who we find out is his little sister, and she's arriving to pay her respects. And Carlsen is like, her respects, where was that 2 years ago when she ran away with the Asperian boy? And he calls her a whore. And he's like,
the Asperians are white people, we can assume.
Aspenian. Right? I'm sorry. Yeah, it's the Aspenians.
Aspenian.
And he,
I think it's Asperians in the Poppy War, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe it's Hesperians in the Poppy War.
Hesperians is the Poppy War. Aspenians is
Aspenian.
Jade City.
They're all forms of white. Let's face it.
White people.
White people. And so he says that they are no longer together, and Carlsen is like, good news, at least on that. And he says, too much bad blood between our people, they would have never worked. And he said, and our children would have been weak. And Lan is like, well, he's talking about like Jade, I think, but also like he's bitter because Shay was his favorite. And so he asked him to be kind to her. And he's kind of just like, everyone's dead. They were all younger than me. I'm the oldest. I'm still alive. Like, this is just ridiculous. And Lan's like, the gods love you, Granda. And like, Sen takes immediately, like, just hates him so much. You can tell he's a terrible person, kind of. He tells Lan that he's weak. Lan asks permission to fire Doru, or kind of says like, I'm thinking about firing him. And
yeah, he's like, what do you think if I got rid of him? Because he kind of seems behind on the times here.
And Sen is like, nope, I'm not cool with that. He's a good weatherman. Don't do that. And he kind of says like, he puts down Hilo, and he's like, he's got thick blood, but he's just an idiot. He's just like, he's too much stuck with like fighting. And he said he would have been a fearsome warrior just like Do. So he's kind of like pitting his grandkids against each other too.
Yeah.
And so he like talks about how Ani, he talks about to Lan about how his wife left him and he didn't murder her and her lover. And how that
because that's
Lan
something
weak.
that we find out about Lan is that he was married and is not married anymore because his wife cheated on him with someone else. And it was assumed that he would retaliate and just be like, you know what, cheat on me, you're both dead.
Right.
But he didn't, because Lan is actually a level-headed person.
Well, and he's just like, killing them would have done nothing.
What would that have proved? Nothing.
Yeah, he was just like, it doesn't make me an unworthy person to like walk away from this situation. And so it's like, I came to you for your help with Doru, but like I just get ramblings and insults. And so Kalsen is like, well, beat me up. If you're strong, you'll beat me up. And he kind of like
you're just trying to pick a fight. You have tons of jade on you, and I'm not going to do that because you're old.
Right. And so Kalsen starts beating up on Lan until Lan like cuffs his grandfather and like pretty much like throws him back. And so then Lan's horrified that he let like anger and like reaction get the better of him. And he's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then his grandfather kind of does like a dirty move on him. And he's like, to be a pillar, you have to act with full intention. And Carlson is like, full intention. Like Jade amplifies what you have inside you, what you intend, but like without intention, you're not powerful. And then he's like, Doru stays. And so Lan kind of just lets it go because he's not going to fight his grandfather. And so then we cut over to Hilo, who like tells his fists what they need to do. And you can kind of tell that the fists don't really respect his brother because he's too weak in their minds. But he kind of talks about how like he wouldn't want his brother's job because he recognizes how difficult it is and how much like his brother has to keep everything maintained, where all he has to do is fight with like his fists, and he feels better about that. And he like did get some leeway with him. He did like, again, Hilo is very much about respect and like loyalty, and he's very loyal to his brother.
Right.
So instead of going back to his house, he drives downtown and he parks somewhere in a neighborhood where he has to walk. And he's like, I like parking in random places so no one knows where I'll be. And it's like, Hilo is definitely very dramatic and I love it. But
I also think there's something to it though, where it's just kind of like, they like to kind of distract. They know that they're kind of like notable people in the area. Right. And they're like, I don't want people to really know where I'm going to be at. And I just will park random places so then people can't really find me.
Well, and so then he sneaks into an apartment where a woman is sleeping, and he's like, oh my gosh, she like left her windows open. She could have been attacked. And we find out that this is, as the chapter says, his kitten, which I don't like that term.
I did not like very much of this interaction at all, honestly.
And we find out that this is Kane and Tar's little sister, who is a Stone Eye. Wen, thank you for seeing her name because I couldn't find it. There it is. And they have sex.
But she's like not awake when this whole thing starts, which is
well, it's also like a weird like,
I don't know.
I could have been someone who came in to attack you.
I could have just been somebody who came in and sexually assaulted you. Aren't you glad that I'm not?
And she was like, I fell asleep waiting up for you. And it's just like, it's very old school. But yeah, so but this is where we found out that like Hilo is pretty much very in love with her. And he likes her quite a bit. And so
so we know he's got a weak spot when he's portrayed as the person who's so strong and nothing can break him, and he's very loyal to the family and everything. And this is where we learn that Wen is his weak spot.
Well, and we also find out that Wen is like his true love, and he kind of sees like it only makes him think of his brother and Ani, who left him. And you find out that he had tried to whisper Ani's name and her lover's name, and like Lan blew
He
up
shut
on
it down.
him, and he was like, I didn't ask you to do this. I get out of my personal life, you know. And he was like, I was doing my brother a favor, and it was just
I
like,
was just trying to help. And like,
yeah.
no, that's not the help I want.
He's kind of talking about like her family, and like you find out that the Mikes are like a clan that aren't very well respected, or weren't for a while. And he and he's like, no one thinks about you guys like that anymore, like don't worry about it. And she kind of points out that like Shay never trusted her, and he's like, yeah, Shay is like, she ran off with an Espenian naval brat, and now she's crawling back like a puppy, and he's like super mad at his little sister. And he's like not talking about her all that well. And he like kind of talks about how his family doesn't really matter in all this, like because he loves Wen, so it's fine.
Right.
And so he also talks about how he thinks the mountain is up to no good, and he's going to have to look into it so that he can convince Lan. And like Doru is all over the clan. It's almost impossible to get away from him, so he has to work against him in like a very smart way. It's my kitten. Ew, I just don't like that.
I don't like that.
No.
No.
Yeah, and you can tell she's like kind of ready for battle. She was like, if I were a green bone, I could help you. I could be the most dedicated fist. And he's like, I don't need a fist. And it's like, okay, but she's saying she has a want, and it doesn't get addressed in her life. So he's okay. Like,
but you're so good at having sex with me. Why would you want to do anything else?
Oh my God. Yeah.
No, shut up, you.
Then it's
quiet,
like,
you.
She asks if he's checked in on the academy to his cousin Andin. And he's like, oh, I'll go do that. That's a good idea. And so then we cut on over to Shay, who's coming back from
the little sister from
the little
school.
sister, the one who's returning after she goes to college. Her name is Michael Corleone.
Is this Michael Corleone, the youngest sibling who was disgraced from the family? And obviously Hilo's Sonny. Like,
yeah.
So many similarities.
But she comes back. She's like trying to do the thing where she's like, okay, I'm back, it's fine, I love being home, but also I'm not wearing Jade and it feels really weird, and like I have to ask to like be taken to my home compound, and they don't know who I am, and I don't want to be a part of the family. I went to college, I tried to break away, but she like couldn't find a job. And you kind of find out that like in Espenia, they're all kind of like pretty judgmental of where she came from, and the fact that she trained in martial arts, and they don't understand like the Greenbone Jade center of herself.
So then they all just like assume that any kind of talent she has is Jade based, and she's constantly trying to prove herself like, no, it's not Jade, I don't have Jade.
Right. And they also talk about her boyfriend, who of course is named Gerald. Because why wouldn't you why wouldn't you throw your life away for Gerald?
Gerald the white man. Amazing.
White man. And so she gets this taxi to take her home, and the guy like doesn't want to take money from her because his
he knows who she is, and she's like, no, you need to take it, just take it.
Right. And so he was like, I need help, my brother-in-law needs help, and she's like, I can't do that, I'm not part of the family business anymore.
That's not me, that's my brother.
Or it's his father-in-law was having an issue. And so she gets out of the taxi, and then the Abukai housekeeper is like, oh my gosh, you look so different, and you smell Espedian. And Shay's like, thank you, like I don't know what to do.
Wow, you're so cultured, you smell like an Espedian.
And it talks about like how hard she worked to like to graduate top third of her class. She was a little bit behind at first. And you find out that Lan has been like the only one who kept in touch with her, even though like
send her letters, but and she felt bad because she was like, I wasn't really responding as good as I should have.
Which just sounds like anyone in college.
Yeah,
I reached out a million times. That's like Laura and me during my law school era, where you would text me and I'd be like, yeah, okay, and then I just disappear for a while. And so you also find out that like Lan thinks that their grandfather isn't doing well, so he asked her to come see him. And so she's like, okay, I can like go home, this is the right idea for me. And so she goes up to see Kalsen, and she kind of like thinks about how much she like respected him for so long. And then like he treated her so poorly when she left. It just didn't go well.
Well, and then he's a total D-bag when he was like, "Oh, good, you're back. I forgive you." And she's like, I'm not asking for forgiveness here.
Right.
And then
she's
he's
like,
even more of a jerk and is like, "Thank God it didn't work out with him. I knew it wasn't going to."
well,
like,
doesn't he say something about like I could have never accepted your children or something? Like he's pretty awful.
It's terrible.
And like,
and she's like, "I hate that you're right, that he actually did turn out to be a flop of a boyfriend.
Right.
I absolutely hate that you're right.
We've all been there, okay?" But like, it's just, and then he assumes she's going to move in, and she's like, I'm not doing that.
No,
I'm
I've got
living
an
somewhere
apartment
else in the city.
Even though she doesn't have one yet.
No, and she's like, I'm not gonna wear Jade. That's not happening. And Lan like quickly interrupts and like eases the pain for everyone. And she's like, well, I'll come see you again. I love you, Granda. And he's just like, whatever. And his last words to her, for the love of God, put your Jade on. It hurts me to look at you like that. And it's just like, what a wonderful man.
You are terrible.
And so you find out that their mother is kind of like out in a more rural part of the country. She's not like around anymore. She's
after her husband died, she moved out to the country, and she's kind of like, I don't really want to be involved in this crime syndicate anymore.
And he's like, I don't want to be in this crime syndicate. And so she like asks how he's doing. He's like, oh, I'm just busy. But he's like not asking her to get involved at all. And she like has a little bit of like, oh, I wish I could tell him no. Right. I wish he would ask me, but Lan's so respectful. And so she goes to the hotel. She just kind of thinks about how it feels like home and how there's like no peak stuff going all the way around. She also thinks about how easy it would be to put on Jade. But it's just not right for her right now. And then she needs to she starts trying to look for an apartment, but it's incredibly hard when you've never had to look for an apartment without using connections before. Yeah,
she's like, I actually have to work at this. Whoops.
And so she finally finds something. And then she runs into Hilo. And Hilo's genuinely hurt that she's avoiding him. And she just doesn't really know how to talk to him because she knows he's really bitter about her leaving. But he's also similar to their grandfather, where he's like, I've forgotten the past. Everything's forgiven. Yeah. And she's like,
no, that's not how this works.
Right. I don't need forgiveness. And she was kind of ready to stay angry at Hilo because he was so terrible to her when she left. But it's really hard because Hilo's just, Hilo.
Hilo is Hilo.
And Lana's been very respectful of it, of her decisions and her needing to come home, but her needing to do it on her terms. And Hilo's just like, where's your Jade? You're part of the family. You can't get out of the family. Everyone in the family works for the family. What are you doing? Family. He's about to star in his own Fast and the Furious franchise.
That is actually a very good comparison.
That is exactly how Hilo talks to it.
That was my Vin Diesel impression.
And so she was like, well, and so she literally has to walk around his emotions to make it so he doesn't scream at her in an apartment building. And so she's like, I'm just not ready yet, Hilo. And he's you can tell he doesn't feel like she's telling the truth, but feels like he's gotten something there. And he's like, okay, take the time you need. And then she's like, okay, well, say hi to Andon for me, because he mentions he's going to go see Andon. And he's like, go say hello yourself. And then we cut over to their quote unquote cousin, Andon.
It's their adopted cousin. Yes, well, he's their adopted little brother, kind of.
Little brother, pretty much, but they call him a cousin to kind of show that there is a difference. His name is Emery Andon, but he goes by Andon. You find out that
his mom was part of the Mountain Clan, actually, and she was a pretty powerful Jade user. And his dad was a Aspenian?
Yeah, his father was a Aspenian, and he has an Aspenian surname because of it.
Yeah, and he decides to keep that just to kind of humble himself, I guess, basically, because he is a very humble person. But his mother tragically died after suffering a long time from depression and other things, it sounds like, and dealing
It
with
sounds like
loss
she also had
herself.
like the itches as well. She had an addiction
Yes.
that got to be too much. And after
he
that,
witnessed a really brutal thing that she self-harm.
yes.
And so then to get help, he went to his neighbors, the Calls.
Yes.
And unfortunately, his mother died and he was taken in by the Call family.
Yeah, and it was kind of through the intervention of land that happened. And it talks about like how they offered him their surname and he was like, no, I'm fine.
I'll keep mine.
And like his family was very established with the Mountain Clan. So it was very interesting that the No Peak clan stepped in and kind of took him in. But they have sent him to the academy, but we find out that he's incredibly sensitive to Jade. So he has to be a lot more careful than other children, especially with his background. So he has a deep-seated fear coming from like his experience with his mother. And so, but
and
he's
it's
also
interesting too, considering he's only like half-blooded. I don't like that term, but I don't know another way to explain it of how powerful he is,
right,
in terms of Jade sensitivity.
Yeah, I would say he's biracial.
Yeah, I mean,
biracial. Yeah,
they refer to blood in this.
Yeah,
so I didn't know, and it's a magic system. I don't know how to refer to it. But he is biracial.
And he's biracial. And so he kind of talks about how he's seen differently. He doesn't have a ton of friends. Some people try to reach out sometimes, but it's very interesting that he's biracial.
Almost one of those things that he's isolated for so many different reasons. He's isolated because of his privilege with the Call family. He's isolated because he's biracial. He's isolated because he's good at his schoolwork. So it's really difficult for him.
Well, and like they kind of talk about Jade in this because again, exposition central, where it's just like you have to hit the boards and everything he needs to crack in just the right way. And if you hit it with too much force, it like goes way too hard, and if you hit it with too little, you're not going to crack all of them, and you can also harm yourself if you're not in the control. And he's the only one who's able to do it right, but he has to
bricks.
Yes, but he has to deal with like worse Jade withdrawals after he removes any Jade covering. You're not allowed to walk around with Jade when you're just a student. And so like one of his people like named Tan invites him out later, and he's like, okay. And so they kind of just talk about all the stuff, and he finds out that there's a visitor, and he sees Hilo, and
Hilo is a jerk and decides to be like, "Oh, I'm gonna beat the crap out of you because my brother used to do that to me." We find out that Lan did not do that. That Hilo would antagonize him to the point where they would start fighting. Him.
Yeah,
and so Hilo thinks that he's got like some little buddy sidekick situation going on with Andy, and he calls him Andy, like a weird nickname.
He kind of likes it, but he kind of doesn't.
Kind of doesn't. Yeah, it's weird. And so they start fighting, and Hilo's like beating the crap out of him, but he's kind of holding his own a little bit. And there's passersby that are like, "What the heck is going on over here?"
Right, and they're like watching it to like watch a cow beat up on a child, I guess. And so
he's like thinking all throughout this, hope that they know he's not going to kill me. And
like he's going pretty hard.
About, like, hope that this guy isn't such a D-bag that he has to beat the crap out of me for no reason.
Well, he like he's also like he has more of like a land temperament, I'd say. And so he's like, I'm honored you like came to see me. And I love this part because Hilo goes, you look surprised to see me. You didn't think I'd forget to come wish you a happy birthday, did you? And the next line is, Andon had turned 18 a few days prior. It's like he did forget.
Don't remember when my birthday is. So.
And so he like mocks him when he's being like respectful and when he's like trying to keep up with niceties because he doesn't really feel at home with the Calls. And it talks about how he'd like lived there for years, but he always just like
he still feels like an outsider.
Yeah. And so then like he beats up on him. He's like, oh, you're getting almost too powerful. Like, I almost can't do that. Once you have Jade, you're going to be awesome. And we need you on our lines. Like, you're going to be a great fist. And he's just promising a lot of stuff that like, he doesn't really realize that like Anton feels uncomfortable with and doesn't really know what to do with at this time in his life.
Right.
You also find out that like, he's super insensitive and like, he's like, oh, do you think that you can't be a fist because you like boys? And it's like, wow, that's so sensitive to
Yeah, that's
ask a comic kind of
terrible.
question. Like, so you find out that Andon
Don't
is,
worry. Gay people can be tough too.
oh my God.
Are you serious, Hilo?
And so he's also talking about like how he's only half Kekani. So he's kind of hinting like I'm uncomfortable. I'm heading up to this big, huge trial of my life, and like I have a lot of mixed emotions. And he's like,
Mhm.
don't worry, the fact that you have some foreign blood might make you better. And like it's like that's not what he wants to hear right now.
No.
Um,
You are saying all the possible wrong things, Hilo.
and he kind of talks about how like they called Andon's mom the Mad Witch. We go into the thing that you hinted at that I don't really want to go into.
Yeah.
Too much. It's just like Andon had a very hard childhood during his like the time he had to like take care of his mother and had to do all those things. And then he had to go with a family who he wasn't fully comfortable with. So that's not great. And then you find out that people are using a drug called Shine now. And Aspedians are using it to try to give them the same power as Greenbones. And so sometimes it's a good buffer for those who have jade sensitivity. But it can take years off their life. So like Anna's like, you want me to do something to myself that's harmful and potentially kill me after my mom had like this huge issue.
Right.
And Hilo's kind of like, don't worry, like we're about to head into a war. We need you. And then he's like, Shay says hello. And he's like, is she back now? And like Hilo's like just letting all the family secrets out, where he's just like muttering about like he's just like, oh my and so he's just like, hey, like the mountains are coming. And it goes like, so once you graduate, you need to be ready. And like he talks about how like Mata, he calls her a bitch. He's such a wonderful person. And he's like, there's trouble on the mountain. And it says that it comes for Andon that next week.
Yeah, Andon says something about like, I thought that that's just like Hilo doing his whole Hilo thing where he's like, there's trouble coming, like we gotta be on the lookout, blah 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 blah. It's like didn't really think that it was gonna amount to anything. It was kind of like far off. But unfortunately, the next week I run into an issue.
He is out for boat day, which is a holiday on like bribing the petulant typhoon god Yofo with enough destruction to satisfy him for the coming year and forestall any earth scourers. So like hurricanes. So Andon goes out.
I thought that was clever.
I really liked it. I thought that was fun. Like it's supposed to be a day of peace. Like no one's supposed to be fighting. It's kind of a huge event for tourists to come in. And Andon all of a sudden has to pee because he's not really used to drinking. And so he kind of
he's out with some friends and he drank too much because they're partying, you know. And
he's barely drinking anything. He just like doesn't have a high tolerance.
Well, and then he even says, he's like, oh, this is the Aspanian in me.
And so he randomly goes and he pees, and on his way out, these three young men, teenagers stop him, and they're like, you're gonna piss and not buy anything. And he suddenly realizes that he's in mountain territory, and he's obviously wearing a shirt from Kaldu Academy. And these kids are from the other academy. And so they like, this is where I get mad at like teenagers who get into fights, because it's like you need to like touch the ground and say that you guys drink piss and that we're the best.
We want
ever.
Your shirt. We're gonna
and you
put
need
it
to give
above our
your
urinals.
And it Seriously. Says, and then you need to say Kaldu Academy is a school of thin-blooded shit eaters and bastards. And it's like, do you want to know?
I'm not going to do any of that.
Right. Like, it's like one of those things where it's like, I understand if you want to be tough, but like, why ask for something that a teenage boy who is part of like pretty much a military academy is never going to ever do in a million years?
Right.
Like, no. And so he kind of refuses. And one of the ladies inside the store is like, not inside the store, get out. And so they all like go outside. He tries to run away. They try to team up on him 3 against 1. He knows he really can't fight them too much, but he actually does hold his own. Like he beats up on them quite a bit.
He's like, I'm not going to win this, but I think I know some strategy to use to kind of hold my own.
But he does get like knocked down. And right as he's about to get really assailed, suddenly someone stops them. And he finds out that it's Wylan, who is the pillar of the mountain clan. And
No,
oh wait,
not the pillar.
sorry,
I
sorry, I'm sorry. I Meta. I knew I knew what it was. Wylon is the academy. I'm so sorry, guys. My trying to
It's
get
Gaunt
through this.
Ash, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
the
Gaunt Ash.
horn.
Is the horn of the mountain. I apologize. I knew that he was the military person. I just forgot what it was called for a second. So Gaunt Ash stops them and he's like, you guys aren't supposed to be fighting on boat day. What are you guys doing? There are tourists around. They're going to go talk about this. You like made us look really bad. And all the kids are like, we were teaching him a lesson. Plus, he hit us first. And it's like,
yeah, because you guys antagonized him and he was just trying to maybe think of a way to hit you quick and then get away.
Exactly. And so they're like, well, is this how fingers address fists? Like, you guys are being rude. And so he tells them to leave, and Gaunt is like, you're Andon Emery. I know exactly who you are. You were adopted by the Culls, and like, you need to come with me right now. And he like Gaunt Ash is even like, it's a shame that you stopped them, my fist. It would have been interesting to see how he fought. And it's like, oh, that's nice.
I would have loved to have seen this because we know the history of this kid and it would have been really interesting.
And so they take Andon like up to the mountain home.
I like too that it's mentioned once we're inside how the styles between the two clans are different. How the No Peak clan is really incorporated in a lot of modern things into their architecture and their style, and the Mountain clan is very much like traditional in the way that they've decorated and kept up their home.
Right. And they also talk about like how great IU and Kalsen used to be, and like they would have had a great society if they hadn't had the falling out that divided the One Mountain Society. And so they're just kind of like talking to Andon about the history of this and why, and like how they met Andon's family because they were mountain people and all this stuff. So then we cut over to Lan in a meeting with Doru and some of the Lantern men, kind of deciding about like what steps to take and what to do with the business. And Lan is kind of like, I don't know, I trust Doru with this stuff. And it's like, Lan, come on.
Don't trust Doru with anything.
Suddenly he gets a call that he knows is from Gaunt Ash, and it's like, hey, we have Andon. We cross paths with him. No rules have been broken. We're just having a talk with him, a very cordial and civilized talk. In 3 hours, he'll be released here. No need to be concerned for his safety as long as no one else overreacts. And he goes, I'm referring to
especially Hilo. He better not lose it.
And so Lana's like freaking out. He realizes he needs to talk to Hilo first. So he like literally calls restaurants and he's like, can someone go find me my brother?
Yeah, he's like, does anyone know where he's at?
And so he gets to him and like you find out that Hilo just found out about Andy and he like wants to go after them. And he's like, calm down, like they're skirting Aisho, which is like their rules of engagement. And so Hilo says that he has
because he's not a Jade carrier yet, so he can't be harmed.
Exactly. And it's like boat day, and it just like it would be really bad for them to harm an academy student, especially if it is pretty much the sibling of the Cowl siblings. So they're like towing the line of being rude and being insubordinate to Lan, but also it probably doesn't look good for Lan that like one of his people who was closest to him was taken. So Hilo has like the place surrounded for them. And Lan is like, we need to get Andon back. It's going to be fine. Like, we need to just keep everything contained. And so Lan like wants to go join Hilo almost, but he's just like, canceled the rest of my days. I need to be in my office. I need to be waiting by the phone in case something happens. So yes, we cut over to Andon, who's like you said, seeing the architecture. It's all K-Con, like it's all like old and traditional. And then we find out about IU who had perished without an heir. And
this was really interesting to me because you find out that there were two. In the war, I guess he was married and had an infant son. His wife and infant son were killed, and then he adopted 3 children who were Jade sensitive, and it ended up that the eldest son was put as the pillar and then the next son was the Horn, I believe, and then the daughter was going to be the Weatherman.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up that she brutally killed them
Mm-hmm.
to establish herself as the pillar of the family, and has been pillar ever since.
Yeah. And it talks about how like the term whisper a man's name, because like she had whispered one of her brother's names, and it says it originates from the occupation period when the identities of foreign officials targeted for assassination were passed secretly through rebel networks. And so she murdered her siblings, and one of them like wasn't all that into it, so it was just like pure power play on her part. She didn't need to, likely, and she just did it. And so like Carlson kind of sent her like a heart blossom symbolizing sympathy and friendship with dancing star lilies, over her father's death, to show that like we're not going to mess with you. Right. And so she's already taken over 2 minor clans during her time, one willingly and one not so willingly. And so they go into her office. It's like very cultured. It's very interesting. There's like a proper office, and then sofas with leather armchairs. And so the pillar comes in. It talks about how like she's just sitting there. She has like these like beautiful wristbands with jade just like all over them.
But she's like dressed normally, like she just went to the gym or something. And he's like, "Oh, I'm surprised that she's just looks so normal. I don't know why I was expecting somebody really extravagant."
And so then she serves them tea. It's like a fresh pot. And he's like, okay, like, I don't know. Hostages can be served.
But she serves herself first.
Yes.
To indicate that she is more important. Which I love that subtlety.
And so she makes an offer for Andon to join the mountain, saying that like he would be very powerful. And she could put him as a fist, and like no one would look down upon him because his family came from mountains. So it would make sense.
She kind of is like, look, you belong here. It was just a fluke that you ended up in that clan, and we want you back, and we have this opportunity because we're going to start smuggling some stuff, and we want you to be involved because this is a good business opportunity for us.
Well, she's like, you can be the fist in Utan. And he's like, why there? And it's like this cold, desolate area. And she says that they are making SN1 or Shine there, because the world's opening up and international places are already using their jade to do this. So like, why wouldn't they make money and control the source it's coming from? And Andon is kind of speechless by this, because he's like, you're admitting to me that like you're going to be breaking the law. Like it's illegal and reviled here to work with Shine. And
she's basically like, and he is also kind of annoyed that she wants to peddle this to people that aren't able to use Shine to like, or not, aren't able to use jade in order to, because it's supposed to be kind of like a coveted thing that their people only are the ones able to use jade. And she's like, look, if we're not doing it, other people are going to be. So I want to have control over it. I'm trying to be smart here and get ahead of the game. Do you want it or not?
Right. And she kind of also is like, oh, by the way, like we could be a great clan once again if we really wanted to. And wouldn't it be great if we all came together to produce this and not be and like take over the KJA and all this stuff? And he's kind of like, I am not fully interested in that, but I'll think about it. And he's like, also, I'm only a student, so forgive me, but like if you want to join up with the No Peak to do this, why not ask them yourself? And she's kind of like impressed that he was so forward with this.
Right.
And she was like, well, I would do it, but like his horn keeps like fighting against us. She's and like
Hilo is a problem.
Well, and she's like, how could we keep doing this if he keeps giving offense to us? And this is the part where I'm like, you know what? F that. Like, you are being shady. You are trying to do illegal stuff. How dare you be like, this other guy is kind of mean about it? Like, that's not
the thing is, it's just a lame excuse. She's trying to pin it on something else just to kind of distract him and make herself seem sympathetic. And it's like, oh.
Well, also Lan kind of buys
right through it.
But like Lan buys into it, and it's like, no, Lan, like she's doing illegal crap. Like
the thing is, not though, about the reason she's so smart, because he's got these doubts about Hilo in the back of his mind too, which is why he buys into it so easily.
I know, but it's so frustrating.
It's brilliant.
it's frustrating when I'm like, oh, come on. Like, you are doing so many illegally bad things, dude.
Mhm.
But anyway, we cut on over. Andon is let go. They go over to Lan.
Yeah, he
And Lan's
immediately goes to him and tells him everything that's happened.
right. And he's
Lan
like,
buys
yeah,
it about
they
Hilo.
right. It's like I brought him to Aitmata. We also found out that like Gaunt Ash was like someone who was supposed to die pretty much for being, I believe, for being like Greenbone or something. And he like asked for a
He's like, I want a
combat.
trial by combat.
Pretty much a trial
But
by
it
combat,
ended
or it's
well
like
for him
add
and not
give me
Game
a
of Thrones style.
well, he was like, give me a clean knife or something, like a death by a clean blade or something. And it's like people get to attack you with blades. And so he got cut by people, but he was able to overpower all of them. So
All
he's
of
supposed
them.
to be like
It was
a
like
pretty
8 or 9
impressive
people
person.
or something.
Because
he's got scars all over his body from this.
Right. And so they're like they learn everything. Lan is like, so they're trying to get permission to produce shine from us. They want us to join in. And Hilo kind of calls it out for what it is, where he's like, why would we do this? Why would we let them control us like this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's only one head in the clan, and it would definitely be Aitmata if you let her do this. Like, let's not do this. And Doru is kind of like, I don't know. It has merit. And it's like, don't freaking trust Doru, Lan. Like, he's the
awful.
worst. And so Hila's like, there's no alliance with the mountain. Like, all the other clans they've taken in don't have control over themselves anymore. Like, it's not the same. And Doru kind of throws out like, hey, if we can give them Andon, it's a good way to like, it's what people used to do. Send children over to the other side to be held as hostages. And like
us offering a peace offering.
And Hilo is like, we're not offering one of our siblings over to the mountain. And Lan's like, yeah, I have to agree with Hilo. And Doru was like super pissed off that they're not listening to him. And like he ends up butting heads with Doru pretty quickly here. And Doru like won't listen to the decision he's made and keeps questioning him. And then he's like, why are you making a decision so quickly? Because he's like, because he says that we are going to prepare a reply to the mountain. We're going to send it through a business operation. So through the weatherman's office, because we're not going to act like them and like send this through children. And he's like,
we're not taking hostages and doing this. We're going to do it the proper way through our weathermen.
Right. And he's like, you guys can do what you want, but we're not going to stand in your way, but we're not going to be a part of it. And Doru was like pushing for it. And he's like, look, if more foreigners have access to shine, demand for Jade will rise as well. Then it's like more for the KJA to send out. It's just not a good idea. It's putting way too much there. And he can't condone sending more Jade out. And Doru is not happy about it. And so he's kind of like, and he's like, well, you know, you guys could join up. The KJA Alliance does a good job. And Lan's like, no, they don't. What are you talking about? Like, if they're all a bunch of fighting people, Doru, shut up. And so, and like Doru's arguing for like shine to be helpful, and Lan does just like shut him down. And he's like, aren't I the pillar? Like, come on. And so he also asks for someone to watch after Shay, and Hilo is pissed off because he's like, well, Shay could just be wearing Jade and take care of herself. And he's like, okay. Like, then we cut over to Barrow, who is like still remembering the feeling of Jade. And so he's going after a man who knows how to get him cut Jade so he could use it. And he asked the man if he's agreeing. His name is Mud. And he's like, oh yeah, totally. And he's like, I don't mind telling you because I know you're hungry. And he's like, I want to work for you. And so we find out that Barrow is going to get a gun. Barrow's got a gun. And so then we cut over to Shay. She's living her life. She's looking for jobs, sort of.
She's in the gentrified area, and she's wearing a spinning clothes and fitting in.
Yeah, and she loves it. She's like, oh, this is so nice. And she like introduces herself to a young student who lives nearby, and she like doesn't give him her last name, and she's like, oh, he's gonna think I'm hitting on him, when she just doesn't want to admit who she is. And then she's just kind of hanging around, and all of a sudden Lan shows up.
With his bodyguards outside.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, could I get a drink? Could I talk to you? And he kind of talks about like how he doesn't really trust Doru. And he's like, he's the most seasoned, but like I feel like he's still too loyal to Granda. And you find out that Shay despises Doru, and she's like, you should replace him. And he's kind of like, yeah, I think it might be time for him to go out, but I want you to look into something for me. I want you to go out to the mines and see what's going on. Something feels wrong. Like if the mountain's working this way, then there should be like
there's
more
some kind of
oversight
evidence there.
And he's like, I don't really trust Doru because he should be catching it if this is happening.
Yeah, and then we get some of Shay's perspective on Doru, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, we find out in a little bit that Doru he is an abusive pedophile, or hebephile is the correct term, but he you find out that he abused one of Shay's friends.
Yeah, she was kind of being mentored by him. Shay was being mentored by Doru for a while because they kind of intended for her to be the weatherman of the clan.
Yes. Similar to Aitmata. And she was being mentored by Doru, and she found out, like, she found this file with pictures of one of her close friends. And she like told the friend, like, you don't have to come over here anymore. And the friend started sobbing because she knew that Shay knew. And she's like,
she was kind of just like, he does so much for our family. Like I
and she's like, I couldn't say no. And she was also like, thank you so much for not making me come over here. And she's like, I'm not a bad person. And Shay's like a good person. So she's horrified that she would ever think that, you know.
And so then she immediately is like, I'm not going to be mentored by him anymore. And she says something to her grandfather, and the grandfather's like, oh, you know, he had a hard time. He was in the war.
He was like, people did horrifying things to him in the war as some justification for him doing horrifying things to other people. And then he's like, but he's never done that stuff to you. And she like immediately loses a ton of respect for her grandfather. And you find out like that's probably why they have a rift, because she sees him for what he is. And he doesn't understand that. So she wants Doru out, so she has some investment in like getting him out of Lan's sights. And she also thinks that like Lan's trying to keep her in the family now. And he's like, no, I need your help because you're outside the family, and I'm not asking for you to join up. I'm just asking.
He's like, I trust you.
Yeah.
I need someone I trust to do this, and I trust you, and you're smart and can do it.
And then we find out that he is trying to make Woon his new weatherman, his like academy friend / like secondhand, like his like bagman pretty much, who's like with him in all things. And so he goes to the KWA or the JWA, and he starts talking. JKA, thank you. Oh my god, I'm just the KJA.
Oh my gosh, every combination
so many combinations of letter wrong. The ABCDEFG.
It's some letters.
So he goes and he talks to like one of the people who's like more in the No Peak clan than anything else, the chancellor, and he talks about how like the chancellors all have to be kind of fed information and like told which way to turn. And so he's kind of Lan's trying to think about his dad through all of this and trying to like be like a pillar of goodness pretty much. And so he asks Chancellor Son to pass a law to prevent any one clan from gaining majority shareholder status of the Kakan Jade Alliance. This is what I'm talking about, where he's talking about like antitrust laws, which is like if one clan gets too much, the KJA can break it up into smaller portions to make sure that no one has a vast control where they can say how much goes out and how much stays in, because the clans usually run the jade mines, and if one of them gets control over it, then they all get it. But I would argue that this is also an oligarchy versus a monopoly, where it's just like a few established people who never get questioned and all just put in more people like themselves. So it's just like, what's better, an oligarchy or a monopoly in these things? And it's why oligarchies are dangerous, because they lead to monopolies. So Fonda Lee is really showing her her financial
business
background. Yeah, it's I was like, wow, I didn't realize I was getting an antitrust lesson in the middle of this book. But anyway, so the Chancellor Son is like, oh, like why are you doing this? Like, what happens? And Lan's like,
Mhm.
well, I'm protecting everyone's interest. Like, it's in your interest to not make sure you're dealing with one clan. And like, I'm working against myself because like I can't gain the highest amount of control then. Um, and he finds out like his dad used to say gold and jade never together because like money and jade, like you're supposed to be, green bones are supposed to be like this pillar of like, we use jade to our benefit, but it's addictive to us and we're going to do this, and money shouldn't be involved in that. um and so it gets murkier as time goes on with the weatherman controlling a lot of business and stuff. So he kind of talks about how this is in the public interest. He convinces the general to kind of, or the chancellor, to go on with him.
And the chancellor obviously has ties to the No Peak clan.
Right. And so he also kind of takes the opportunity. They're like, how's your grandfather doing? And he's like, oh, time steals away from us all. It's like kind of a hint of like, he's old. It's me.
Well, and he says too, he's like, I know that he's only asking because he's trying to be nosy and see how much control he actually has in this situation. So I'm just gonna play it off of, you know what? He's an old man.
Right. Then we cut over to like Hilo breaking into a biker gang's place and being like, you guys are stealing too much. I could take it all away from you, but I want to find out about like what happened to Three Finger G and who the new seller of jade is, and I want you guys being my eyes and ears on that in the mountain, and if they put a toe out of line, I better be hearing about it. And this is where like Hilo's at his most scary because he's just being like
he's
needlessly vicious.
Control and
yeah. So yeah, that's an interesting place. And so he gets out, and then we find out that Shay goes up to the mine and she starts looking through all these records. She gets like a tour of the mine. She feels how much pressure she feels down there. She's not allowed to get too close because like it would overpower her and she would pass out and her heart would pretty much stop. And so she starts looking into all the information, and she finds out that they are overpricing the equipment, like the depreciation on equipment and equipment purchases, like that's not there. So something's happening where like something's going out with this equipment and the math isn't mathing. And she finds that one of the signature pages for this has the Ashes or Gaunt Ashes signature. So why would the horn of the Mountain Clan be signing paperwork? It shouldn't be happening. There's no reason why he would be there signing it. So something is going on, and Doru should have known. So that's fun. And then we find out that Lan frequents a brothel. That seems very like they're very keen on having him there. He mostly just listens to a woman play music. He did start sleeping with her recently. And he's thinking on Hilo about how he's not very prudent, and he does think that like he's getting too much in the mountains business. And it's like, Lan, come on. But he knows that he can't demote Hilo because he trusts Hilo and it's really hard to come by. And he's like kind of just having a good time when all of a sudden the leader of the brothel like comes in and she's like, hi, someone from the clan's here to see you. You have to come out. And they found out that someone has whispered Hilo's name. And this is where we get to the first interlude, where we find out about long ago in heaven. We learn about the extended family of gods living in dazzling places of jade, which is kind of what you're talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Where they had to construct a second home called Earth, and Earth was like a place to have the gods come. And they begin to be spoiled and they quibble over Earth. And then they're like, the god parents grew enraged and they're like, you know what? You guys get to suffer down there. We don't really care. And they buried Jade under a mountainous island because of how selfish their children were. But they kind of keep an eye on them from time to time to make sure nothing too bad happens. And so the earthly conflict comes from this original offense of the children. And thus ends the first third of the book. Laura, do you have
So it was Poya, the goddess of agriculture, took pity on the descendants, helping them, and then laid down.
Laura, do you have any thoughts on what might happen?
So, I mean, I think it's obvious. So I'm only through the first interlude. I think it's obvious in my mind that this is going to follow a Godfather-like trend, and we're going to see the Michael Corleone of Shay become the
Evil?
new leader.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm leaning into, but maybe it will be a different direction.
I have read the first book, so I know exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah. You read the first two, right?
No, I didn't read the second one.
Oh,
I got
thought
it
you read
from
the
the
first two.
library, and I think I was going to like read it last summer, and then we kind of figured out we were going to be putting this book up for voting, and I was like, I'll wait.
Okay. I thought you had already read it.
No, so I will be with you in the second and third book. But
okay.
Yeah, this first book, I like my reread of it so far. So everyone else, join us next week for the second third of the book through the second interlude, I believe. And make sure that you're rating, reviewing, and subscribing to us. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is a great way to get in on the newest information and help us get our names out to other people. Yeah. You can also be joining our Patreon, where we give background information each week and bonus episodes. You should also be following us on Twitter and on Instagram and on Hive, because sometimes we post on there at OWWR Pod. And checking out our blog, where you see some wonderful things posted by Laura most recently at ourpod.com. Join us next week, everyone, and we love talking to you. Bye.
Bye.